Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. The sound of the rain outside was the only thing breaking the silence of the room. The power had just gone out, and I was standing there, halfway between the hallway and the living room, trying to decide whether to move or wait. The air was heavy, filled with something I couldn't explain. It wasn't fear. It was something else, something that made my chest tighten. My hand reached out in the dark, searching for the light switch on the wall. But before my fingers could touch it, warm fingers wrapped around my wrist. Firm. Certain. For a second, I froze. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. His hand didn't let go, it only pulled me closer until I could feel the faint rhythm of his breathing. My heart started racing, loud enough that I was sure he could hear it too. There was no light, no clear face to look at, only that soft space between our breaths. And in that darkness, every sound, every touch, felt louder, sharper, more real. He whispered my name. Just that, quiet, almost trembling, but it felt like the whole world paused. My mind raced. Was this the same person I thought I knew? Or was there something he had been hiding behind that calm, quiet smile all this time? I wanted to ask, but before I could even speak, he pulled me closer, and everything else disappeared. That night wasn't supposed to happen like that. We weren't supposed to be alone. But sometimes life doesn't wait for your plans. Sometimes it traps you in a moment where all logic fades, and the only thing left is instinct. And that's exactly what happened when his lips finally found mine in the dark, slow, hesitant at first, then desperate, like he'd been holding it back for far too long. But just as the world seemed to melt away, a sound broke through the quiet, a door creaking somewhere behind us. I turned, startled, but he tightened his hold like he didn't want me to move. The sound came again. Someone else was in the house. The darkness suddenly didn't feel so safe anymore. Who was standing behind that door? And what would they think if they saw us like this? Maybe love begins in the most unexpected moments, or maybe, sometimes, it's the darkness that reveals what people truly feel when no one's watching. Before we move on, what would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have pulled away, or stayed to find out what that moment really meant? Let me know in the comments. And if you think you already know what happens next, you might want to think again, because what came after that night changed everything. The sound behind the door faded, but it left a trace of unease in the room. The power was still out, and the only light came from the faint glow of the street outside filtering through the curtains. I could finally see his outline, his chest rising and falling fast, just like mine. Neither of us said anything. It felt like words would break whatever fragile thing was holding us together in that moment. When the lights finally flickered back, I stepped back first. He didn't move. His gaze followed me quietly, unreadable, but I could feel something heavy between us, something that hadn't been there before. I tried to laugh it off, to pretend that what just happened was just because of the dark, because of fear, because we didn't know what else to do. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. He'd been staying with me for a week. His apartment was under renovation, and I had offered him a place to crash. We'd known each other for years, always close but never crossing that line. He was the calm one, always in control, always the type to think before he spoke. But lately, something had shifted. His silences had become longer, his glances different. And now, after tonight, everything felt tangled. Over the next few days, things between us changed in small ways. He started making coffee for both of us in the mornings, leaving a mug beside my seat without saying anything. He'd wait up late when I came home from work, pretending he was just finishing something on his laptop. Every gesture felt ordinary on the surface, but I could feel the weight behind it. Like he was trying to say something without using words. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about that night. About the way he looked at me when the lights came back on, like he'd seen something in me he couldn't unsee. And every time our eyes met, I felt that same rush of uncertainty, the same pull I tried to ignore. But there was something else too, a question that kept echoing in my mind. Who had opened that door that night? One evening, I decided to ask. I brought it up casually, over dinner, but the way his hand froze mid-air told me he knew exactly what I meant. He looked at me for a long time before saying quietly, "Maybe it's better if you don't know." I wanted to push, but the tone in his voice stopped me. It wasn't fear, it was something closer to guilt. The silence that followed felt longer than it should have. Somewhere in that silence, I realized something: whatever secret he was keeping wasn't small. And somehow, I was now part of it. The tension between us wasn't just about what happened in the dark anymore. It was about what he was hiding in the light. After that night, the silence between us started to feel louder than any argument could have been. Every morning, we still had coffee together, still exchanged the same small words, but it was different. His eyes lingered too long, his hands always hesitated before reaching for something near me, like he was afraid of what might happen if he got too close again. I kept telling myself I could act normal, but I couldn't stop remembering his voice that night, the way he said, "Maybe it's better if you don't know." It kept playing in my mind like a warning. Better if I don't know what? I thought maybe he was hiding something about his past, or someone he didn't want to talk about. But it didn't feel like guilt from a memory, it felt current. Like something was still happening, and I was standing in the middle of it without realizing. One evening, I got home earlier than usual. His car was parked outside, but the house was quiet. The living room light was on, and I could hear faint talking from his room, his voice, low, almost like he didn't want to be heard. I stood near the door, trying to make out the words. He said my name once, then silence, followed by a whisper I couldn't understand. A woman's voice replied, soft, distant, but real. I didn't know what to think. I waited until I heard the conversation end before pretending to come in normally, calling his name like nothing happened. When he appeared from the hallway, his expression was unreadable again, calm and steady, but I noticed his hands were shaking slightly. He said he was just on a work call. I nodded, but deep down, I knew that wasn't the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house felt suspicious, every shadow in the hallway felt too alive. Around midnight, I heard a door open somewhere again, the same sound from that night when he grabbed my wrist. I got up and followed it quietly. The hallway was dim, and when I reached the living room, I saw the same faint outline of him standing by the window. He turned when he sensed me there, surprised at first, then almost relieved. "You shouldn't be up," he said softly. I wanted to ask what he was hiding, who that voice belonged to, why he kept acting like he was protecting me from something I couldn't see. But before I could say anything, the lights flickered again, just like that night, and everything went black. I heard him whisper something close to me, almost trembling this time. "If you see her, don't move." Who was her? And why did his voice sound so afraid? The darkness swallowed everything again, just like that first night. Only this time, the silence felt heavier, like the whole house was holding its breath. I couldn't see him, but I could hear the slight movement of his footsteps, slow, careful, controlled. Then his hand found mine in the dark, firm but trembling. "Don't move," he whispered again, his breath close to my ear. My pulse pounded so hard I thought it would give us away. Something moved in the far corner of the room. A faint rustle, almost like fabric brushing the floor. I tried to focus my eyes, but the shadows blurred together. Then, just for a split second, I saw it, a shape near the window, faintly outlined against the dim streetlight. A woman. Standing perfectly still. I blinked, and she was gone. I turned to him, whispering, "Did you see that?" But his grip only tightened. "Please, don't look," he said. His voice was low, broken. That's when I realized he wasn't scared of her finding us. He was scared of me seeing her. The power flickered again, and for a moment, the lights returned just long enough for me to catch the look on his face. Pale, terrified, almost pleading. Behind him, near the reflection in the window, I saw it again, a faint outline of a woman's face staring back. The moment the lights went out again, I stumbled backward, gasping, but he caught me before I could fall. "She's not real," I said, trying to convince myself more than him. "Tell me she's not real." He didn't answer. His silence said everything. We stayed there in the dark, surrounded by the sound of rain and our own shallow breathing. Somewhere above, a door creaked open, slowly, deliberately. He looked toward the sound, jaw tightening, as if he already knew who, or what, was coming. My heart raced. I wanted to run, but something inside me needed to know the truth. Finally, I broke the silence. "Who is she?" He hesitated, eyes glinting faintly in the dark. "She used to live here," he said. "Before the house was mine." The air turned cold. My throat tightened. "What do you mean, used to?" "She didn't leave," he whispered. Before I could ask more, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway, slow, dragging, getting closer. He moved in front of me, shielding me with his body as the doorknob began to turn on its own. Everything inside me wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The door opened halfway, and the faint smell of rain and something older, like forgotten perfume, filled the air. A shadow stepped into the room, and I swear I heard her whisper my name. The air turned so cold it felt like every breath hurt. The door stood half open, the shadow still lingering there, unmoving. He didn't say a word, but his entire body tensed as if he was preparing for something he couldn't stop. I could hear the faint sound of dripping water, like someone had just walked through the rain, but neither of us had opened the front door. Slowly, he reached for my hand again, his grip colder than before. "Don't let go, no matter what happens," he said, his voice low but shaking slightly. The light flickered once more, and that's when I saw it clearly, a reflection in the glass window behind her. It wasn't just one figure. There were two. A woman standing close behind the first shadow, her face turned slightly, watching us. For a second, I thought it was a trick of the light, but when the reflection blinked, my stomach dropped. He whispered something under his breath, almost like he was talking to them, not me. I caught only fragments. "Not again," I promised, "please." The shadows moved closer, slow and silent, until the cold air wrapped around both of us like a wave. I wanted to scream, but his arms came around me instinctively, holding me still. Then, something strange happened. The smell of rain faded, replaced by something warm, familiar. It was the same scent that used to linger on the old scarf he kept folded on the couch, the one he said belonged to someone he once loved but never explained who. That's when it hit me. The woman in the window, she wasn't just someone who used to live here. She was the woman from his past. I turned to him, the realization cutting through me. "She's her, isn't she?" I asked quietly. His face was pale, eyes glistening, but he didn't deny it. "She never left me," he said softly, and there was something in his tone that made it sound more like regret than fear. The shadow stepped closer, and for a moment, the outline of her face was clear, sad, beautiful, haunting. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at him. And in her eyes, there wasn't anger, there was longing. The lights burst back to life, bright enough to make me flinch. The room was empty. No shadow. No figure. Just the two of us, standing there, breathless. He let go of me slowly and turned away, his hands trembling. "Now you understand," he whispered. But I didn't. Not really. Because when I looked down, there were wet footprints leading from the door straight toward where we stood, then stopping right between us. Like she had been standing there, listening. He turned to me, his eyes hollow but full of something unspoken. "She doesn't want to hurt you," he said. "But she doesn't want to let go of me either." The thought sent chills through me. The house felt alive again, like it was breathing with us. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound too deliberate to be random. Whatever had bound him to her wasn't finished. And now, somehow, I was part of it. The house went silent again, but it wasn't the kind of silence that comes from peace, it was the kind that feels alive, waiting. He stood in front of me, his shoulders tense, his face caught between fear and decision. I could see that he had finally stopped running from whatever this was. "It's time," he said quietly, more to himself than to me. I didn't understand what he meant until I saw him walk toward the door that had creaked open earlier. I followed, my heartbeat loud in my ears. The air grew colder the closer we got, and then, for the first time, I heard her voice, soft, broken, almost human. "You said you'd never leave me." It came from the dark hallway, trembling with something between anger and sorrow. I froze. He didn't. He took a deep breath and whispered, "I didn't leave you. You never let me go." His voice cracked, and I could hear the weight of all those unspoken years in it. The shadows moved again, forming the faint outline of her figure. The woman from his past, the one whose name he never said out loud. The lights flickered weakly, revealing her face for a single heartbeat, pale, tearful, and heartbreakingly familiar. She looked at him like someone who had been waiting too long. And then, she turned her gaze to me. "You took him," she whispered. Before I could speak, he stepped between us. "No," he said, his tone firm for the first time. "I kept living. That's what you wanted for me once." His voice was shaking, but it held strength too. "You have to let me go now." The shadow seemed to falter, as if torn between anger and love. The lights dimmed, the air pressed heavy, and then, everything stopped. A rush of warmth filled the room, like the house itself exhaled. The chill was gone. The darkness faded. She was gone. I stood there, trembling, waiting for something else to happen. But he didn't move. He just stood silently, staring at the space where she had been. I reached for his hand, but when I touched him, it was cold, too cold. He turned slowly, his eyes soft but distant. "She finally let go," he said. "Now I can too." And then, before I could understand, his hand slipped from mine. His body crumpled to the floor, his heartbeat fading like the last echo of a dream. The warmth vanished again, replaced by a stillness that felt final. When the paramedics came, they said it was his heart. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. He hadn't died from pain. He had followed her. Sometimes love doesn't end, it just waits for the right moment to take you home. When they took his body away, the house felt completely different. It wasn't haunted anymore, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm, where everything feels too still to be real. I sat in the same room where it all began, staring at the light switch on the wall. That's where it started. That's where everything changed. I kept expecting the lights to flicker again, for the air to turn cold, or for his voice to break the silence. But nothing happened. Only peace. Days passed, then weeks. I found myself replaying every moment, wondering if it was love that kept her spirit there, or guilt. Maybe both. And him, maybe he couldn't live in a world where both love and loss were pulling at him from opposite sides. Some people say love fades. I think it transforms. It becomes memory, energy, something that lingers in the corners of the places we once called home. One evening, I went back to his room. His things were still there, the books he read, the old scarf that smelled faintly of rain, and a single framed photo of her. I picked it up and smiled softly. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I whispered, "You finally got what you wanted. Both of you." The lights stayed steady that night. No shadows. No whispers. Just the faint sound of rain tapping against the window, like a quiet goodbye. It's strange how something so terrifying can turn into something that teaches you about love, the kind that doesn't end, even when life does. I still dream about him sometimes. In those dreams, he's standing by the window, smiling, with no ghosts around him. Just peace. Maybe love isn't about holding on. Maybe it's about letting go when the heart is ready. How did this ending make you feel? Do you think love can really cross between two worlds? Comment your thoughts below, and if you want a sequel that explores what happens after, let me know. Your comments decide where the next story begins.